Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you. My name is Ray Lemaitre. I'm the editorial director at Telecom TV. I'm your moderator for this afternoon's session. We're going to be talking about a topic that's really pretty important to any part of the telecom ecosystem, and that's certification. This is something I've seen make a difference and work in different parts of the telecom networking sector over the past 20, 30 years. We're talking about Open RAN certification particularly today. We've got a great lineup of speakers, so I'm going to ask them now to introduce themselves one by one. Christian.
Yeah. Hey everybody, I'm Christian Toivo. I'm the executive director of TIP, Telecom Infra Project, which is a non-profit organization driving open and disaggregated solutions.
Adam Ladeke, AVP of RAN technology at AT&T. I lead the forward RAN architecture team and have responsibility for driving cloud RAN and open network management within AT&T.
Hi, this is Paco Martin. I have the pleasure to lead the Open RAN team in Vodafone for quite some time right now, working on Open RAN and also playing a role in TIP. I'm an alternate board member of the Telecom Infra Project and also part of the executive committee of the Orang Alliance. Thank you for your time.
Finally, good afternoon. I'm Franz Seiser, Deutsche Telekom. So happy to have this panel here in our booth, of course. I'm part of our group technology team, and I'm leading a tribe called Radio Access Disaggregation, which is exactly our endeavor, how we call it, to make O-RAN a commercially deployable solution as soon as possible.
Okay, so a great lineup. Let's get right to the heart of this topic. Christian, can you just sort of explain exactly what certification is, what's involved, what kind of organizations are actually involved in this and perform it, and why this is a pertinent time for certification in Open RAN?
Okay, so maybe before I even mention that word, I start from the fact that I feel and we see that Open RAN is ready for acceleration. There's been a lot of work done by pioneering companies, both vendors and operators, and of course O-RAN Alliance has done a lot of work in terms of driving the specifications forward. We've seen the first commercial deployments, and those commercial deployments and the work associated with them have shown that it would be beneficial for accelerating the, let's say, uptake of the technology to be able to demonstrate, validate, and also state that both products and solutions consisting of those products are ready to be taken into customer operator acceptance and deployment. So it's about creating, let's say, visible proof points and confidence for the industry that solutions are ready to be deployed. That's what I see as the relevance of certification. And that, of course, involves hard work in terms of defining how that is to be proven, meaning how is that to be validated. It requires good interwork between what is done in O-RAN Alliance in terms of securing the compliance of Open RAN or O-RAN products, as well as from the operators who are keen to understand that the solutions they will purchase fulfill both the specs as well as the performance criteria. And it's the last piece where TIP as an organization is also coming into play to ensure that the performance aspects become validated and proven.
Okay. Franz, can you just talk about how certification and badging has worked in the past in the telecom sector, and why this is a time for operators like yourselves, like the companies we see here today, to be pushing this now for Open RAN?
Okay, so let's start with the why. If you followed a little bit what has been published over the last couple of weeks and months, You know, all three operators you have here on stage, we have very concrete plans to deploy O-RAN commercially. So not anymore pilots and trials, we talk commercial deployment, which tells you we are all convinced we are there technically. It's good enough, it's fulfilling our KPIs, it's delivering on our demands, so we are ready to start deploying. Now you have three big guys here on stage, so we have a certain muscle. But what we now need, and again, if you're in radio, you know radio is all about scale. So if we want to make that to thrive and to become the dominant solution, and that's exactly what we want to have, we need to generate scale. And there is still one topic that needs to be addressed to enable scale, and that is to simplify and give ways to deal with the integration challenge. Because the easy thing is you disaggregate, you tear things apart, you all know that. Putting it together and make it work properly, that's slightly more difficult. And especially if you're a smaller player and you don't have this big amount of technical stuff, you need to simplify. You need to have much more assurance that if you buy certain components, you do put them together, they are working. And what we have seen in other areas already, certification is probably the best methodology we know and the best way doing it to create this assurance, people see it's working, and also to deliver in the very end. So saying, if you go out with a tender saying, one of my most important requirements is there are certificates on the components I buy, because then I know it may not be 100% plug and play, but it's, I don't know, 80% plus plug and play. So you're sure if you put it together it's working, and then you need to optimize. And that's what's driving us, because in order to get scale, we need to get this stuff much easier to digest and to build. And certification has shown in other areas of the industry, like small cells, also Wi-Fi, these things are happening, that this is really helping, assuring and lowering this mental barrier for these players. Am I ready? Will I be able to digest and build a system based on these technologies? So that's really what drives us. And luckily, we are very much aligned, as you will see, to exactly go down that route and start now making that happen.
Okay. Paco, from the Vodafone perspective, you know, what does this mean for Vodafone? How's it going to change things for you? How do you see this helping the operator community in general? And what does it mean for operator and vendor relationships? I guess it must help to solidify and bring some fine-tuning to those as well?
Well, I think for operators, I mean, it's very simple. I mean, we cannot replicate the same effort, everybody. And it's a while that I don't see the latest figures, but there are over 500 operators out there in the world. And we need to collaborate. Collaboration is one of the principles for Open RAN. So certification is a way to show that there's been certain collaboration, something is happening, something is there for others to use. So I think in that way, and particularly considering the long tail of operators that don't have multiple labs and they cannot invest on the product integration itself, it's going to be a must. It's very beneficial. And I think the timing is now, because it's now when we're starting to see big deployments, big commitments. We are now in Vodafone in the middle of a very big tender. But soon every small operator will have to make their own plans for Open RAN. So the only way to be there in the right way is to leverage certification. And then in terms of the relationship vendor and operator, there will be different types of relationship depending on the role everybody plays. But certification is about rules, is about communication, is about predictability. So that only helps when it's so many people involved. And I think it's a must. It's out of question. Thank you.
Okay. And Adam, obviously, AT&T now has made the leap into Open RAN with its recent announcement. And there's also quite a lot of sort of testing and verification processes going on. In fact, even more so now, collaboration between the operators in North America. So what does this kind of process mean for the sort of the testing processes and environment at operators like AT&T?
Yeah, so I mean, here recently there was an announcement for an NTIA grant from the U.S. government in the order of $42.3 million to help facilitate Open RAN testing and evaluation. And so it was awarded to a consortium called Accord, and it stands for kind of the acceleration of compatibility and I'm losing my mind, but it's basically for RAN deployment. And so, you have the operators that you've got Verizon, AT&T, Geo, NTT Docomo that's all on this, along with multiple RAN, the traditional vendors, and I'd say new vendors that are part of this as well. And it's really about driving this certification process forward, making Open RAN more of a viable option, not only in the US, but globally. And so you've got big operators that are behind this and supportive of this. And you have, obviously, the community at large that's really driving this, not just from the US, but in Europe as well. And so you're going to see, in my opinion, Open RAN grow in size over the coming years, and you're going to see a much larger percentage of open capable devices within our networks. And
is this sort of move towards having certification processes in lots of different labs and embraced by different companies, is that going to make life easier for AT&T as it starts its Open RAN journey?
It definitely makes it easier. I mean, the challenge, and everybody's alluded to it already, is just the certification process. The amount of time it takes for two vendors to talk to one another. And if you've been through a lot of these conversations, like probably all three of us here have been on, you hear a standard 12 to 18 month interval for any pairing of vendors. And so the certification process is going to help shrink that time down. And it helps us at least with the interaction between multiple vendors. We still got to work through like lifecycle management and those issues, but again, I think we have time to work through the automation for that to be successful. And so there's the certification process. We've got to work through lifecycle management, and all of that's going to be critical for Open RAN to be able to scale in the volumes that we all anticipate.
And can I just ask you as well, how important is it, and I'll come to you in a second as well, Christian, but how important is it that organizations like TIP and the O-RAN Alliance are putting their weight behind this kind of activity?
It's very helpful, and I think both of those organizations have their own roles to help drive the efficiency and the value that O-RAN as it moves forward. And so you think about what O-RAN Alliance and the OTICs, it helps with kind of a lot of that functional testing that's required. You have TIP that's going to help with, I would call, a lot of the performance aspects, understanding a lot of the requirements from the operators around load testing, making sure that the performance is where we need it to be, so that it is something that is actually scalable within the operators' networks.
Okay. And Christian, what's happening at the moment with TIP and your work with the O-RAN Alliance around, helping to put this kind of thing in place?
Okay, so based on these movements that the three operators here talked about, which kind of prove that the time is now to prepare for that scaling up. We have had a lot of discussions, and we are working on an alignment and a clear message to the industry as well, in cooperation between the O-RAN Alliance team and the TIP team, on how exactly those things and the work division that Adam alluded to in practical terms should be implemented, and how, let's say, both operator and the vendor community should then associate with it and enable and kind of make use of it for the benefit of creating that scale that everybody wants. So that's work in progress that we hopefully shortly will be able to kind of give more details about. But the devil is in the detail, because this is, like was alluded by the colleagues here, this is complicated stuff, and you need to get it right so that when multiple vendors, multiple operators in the ecosystem come together in various combinations, everybody knows where they're starting from, how this is to be conducted, and how this is also maintained, which is the important point of lifecycle management, which is still, of course, something to be discussed at length and depth.
Okay. Now, it doesn't seem like a coincidence that we have three major operators here. You didn't wander into MWC and go, oh, well, let's go and talk about certification for Open RAN on Tuesday. Franz, is this like an ongoing and lengthy sort of collaboration, conversation between the operators that are trying to push this forward?
No, totally spontaneous, of course. We met Sunday evening and thought, hey, let's do. No, of course, no. That's of course an ongoing discussion for some time, and we all have slightly different paths. Maybe we're all super happy to see that move of AT&T because this gives the whole thing another boost. But we are working on this topic for quite some time, as you know. And Vodafone being as active as we are on that topic with a clear goal behind it. And as Christian said, now, and as I said before as well, now that we see that we are technology-wise there, otherwise we would not go for commercial deployments, now it's time to say what is the final step we need to take to make that mainstream technology. And this is all about scale. And there is... But then you start but you need to build it. Oh, this is a lot of effort. And if you got 80% of the testing you have to do, these guys need to do as well. So why don't we join forces and make it easier for everyone of us? And easier means also more cost efficient. And as we are now at this tipping point, this discussion is going on, but we felt now we are exactly at this point in time where it's time to get public, to put some clear statements and requirements out and start to get that, prepare that properly. That's super important as well. It must be very clear what's done in TIP, what's done in Northern Alliance, and we're very keen, as all of us are in both forums as well, we will make sure these things fit together. Still details to be fixed, but we are relatively close, I would say. And then we have to execute. And everyone who wants to join, please do so.
Okay. And Paco, what does this mean in practical terms? Once this moves on, presumably quite quickly in 2024, what does this mean to the way that a company like Vodafone interacts with the community? Does certain certificates start to get mentioned in RFI, RFP processes that becomes that part of that engagement?
Well, we are doing that now. We are already asking in our tender to suppliers to be certified initially by the Orange Alliance, but if we evolve or when we evolve with TIP going forward, we will be reliant on that. And also, obviously, it's important to collaborate with other operators. As we've been saying, it's all about scalability. Because, we are making progress. If you go to Vodafone booth now, you can see that the stack we are using works very well. There is a comparison with the latest technology from traditional suppliers, and you see that Open RAN is performing very well. But the problem is what happens beyond that. Can you certify? No, we cannot. We need to leverage what others are doing, and the role of TIP, the role of Orange Alliance is essential. So we need to get more operators stepping in, supporting these organizations. We also need to see some of the funding opportunities that are out there, putting money to help these initiatives so that we get the coordination that is required to get the scalability we are talking about.
Okay. Well, we're coming towards the end of this first panel. There's a deeper dive into what actually happens in this process in the second part. But if we can just get a takeaway comment from each of you, starting with Franz, what is your sort of one key takeaway message for the industry around this process that you would like to get out?
Very simple. Now is the right time to go into this certification process in order to give Oran the scale it needs to become the technology of choice going forward, which we are totally convinced it has to be.
Okay. Paco.
From my side, I think that time is now. Open RAN is going to be the new way of doing radio, and this year is key, and we're starting to see with announcements like AT&T and hopefully the future for Vodafone that it's paying off.
Adam.
Yeah, it's critical. We're all pushing to move O-RAN forward, and it's really economies of scale. And so the more operators that are driving the certification process and pushing it, it becomes financially viable for all of us to scale Cloud RAN. And so it's important to push this forward. The good thing is there's organizations, there's assistance from the different governments. And again, I think this is going to help with moving this forward at a pace that might not have otherwise. And I think the more of us that band together and push this forward, the more successful O-RAN is going to be as we move forward in time.
Okay, Christian.
Yeah, I think it was said by the colleagues, it's all about working together. So these three operators are in the lead helping us to define some of those, particularly the system and the performance aspects for certification. But we, of course, will contribute that to the broader community to make sure we will capture everybody's needs. So get involved, that's, I think, the key. Get involved in TIP, continue to work with the O-RAN Alliance, and we'll make this a success.
Okay. Excellent. Well, before we get into the deep dive about how this really works in a lab, which we'll hear in the second panel, let's have a round of applause for our speakers here, and thank you for their time.
Thank you.
Thanks, James. Okay, so we've heard about what the operators want and why. Now we're going to hear about Open RAN certification and badging in action at the I14 YLab. So if I can ask the next panelists to join me on stage, please. Let's give them a round of applause as they come up. Okay. So this is the second part of this session, and a few people have joined for the second part. So just a reminder of what's happening here. My name is Ray Lemaitre. I'm the editorial director at Telecom TV. I'm just the moderator here, the glue. We have the specialists here who are going to talk about this process that's increasingly important to the operators. So without further ado, let's find out who we have on this panel, starting with Andreas.
Yeah, so Andreas Gladisch, Group Technology, Deutsche Telekom, but now in this role here on stage, the consortium lead of I14Y, which is one of the open labs globally.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Ian Wong. I am in the CTO office of Viavi Solutions, Director of RF and Wireless, also the co-chair of the Test Integration Focus Group in the O-RAN Alliance.
Hi, my name is Jonas Charaf, and I'm a project lead for the I14Y lab from the Capgemini side. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Arda Akman with Juniper Networks, Senior Director of Engineering. I'm in charge of RIC product management, and I'm chairing Use Case Task Group in O-RAN Alliance.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So I guess a good place to start is with I14Y Lab, you know, what it is, what role it's playing. I'm lucky enough to know, because I've been there, seen it in action. But Andreas, can you tell us about it, how it's involved in this kind of certification process?
Yeah, so for I14Y, I think we can look from three different perspectives. It is a publicly funded project, a consortium. And the nice thing about that is it's like a model of the ecosystem. So we have 3 operators on board, 2 system integrators, 2 test system vendors, and a couple of smaller SMEs and academic partners. So we are representing the German part of the ecosystem somehow. The second perspective, we are an open lab. So we are a TIP certified lab, and we are the representative of the Berlin, and of the European OTIC in Berlin. So from that perspective, we run a couple of plug fests already, and we support the ecosystem. And finally, there's a third perspective, and that is related to the previous panel discussion. There's a commercial aspect. So from the analysis of TIP and all those organizations, we know there's an overlap in testing of O-RAN components if we look at the labs of the different operators. And we want to address that and look for a more synergetic approach between the operators. And the good thing is we have 3 operators already on board in I14Y.
Okay. And certification, is this something that's already happening at I14Y?
Absolutely right. So I think certification is a prerequisite to bring the O-RAN promise into life, the O-RAN promise of exchangeability of components. So if you want to change the components, certificates will help a lot. And I have to say thanks to the support of our partners, Rohde & Schwarz, Viavi, we could run a so-called minimum viable process or MVP to figure out what is the right steps to do the O-RAN specific certification. And we've done that successfully. So we're happy to announce today that we finalized 2 O-RAN conformance tests. So we will issue the certificates in the next weeks. So, and also very important, we also run an O-RAN end-to-end batch test. So together with our partners from Capgemini. So that will be released also in the next weeks. And already happened has a third attempt that is related to the TIP RIA specifications, or more specifically, it was a test on the PCI optimization. And this silver badge is already issued by TIP and Deutsche Telekom. So in that sense, we support Deutsche Telekom and the other operators.
Okay. So, Arda, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that specific use case, because this is, something, this is real live happening in this lab.
Yes. We've been very happy for the opportunity DT presented along with TIP. We have TIP Abdel here, our AirHop colleagues, Joe and Anand. Then DT team, Holger, jointly Juniper, Rick, Keysight Tester, AirHop, PCI application. The test case from TIP, along with the enhancements from DT, we came up with a topology that reflects a real-world use case and real-world setup, verified the behavior for success path, error path, many different scenarios to make sure DT is happy with the results, enabling other operators to rely on those test results so they have confidence in the test case. And then followed by this TIP certification. This is the first step into use cases. We have other use cases planned. Juniper is working on /assurance certification. We already have the use case and the test plan in progress with DT and the partners. So we start with AirHop, PCI optimization, and then we'll continue with more use cases from either Juniper or partners.
Okay. And I mean, is this process of certification and badging, is this relevant for all parts of the Open RAN architecture?
It covers quite a bit. The certification goes to use case itself, but the lineup with the test equipment or the RAN node, the RIC, all the components involved are captured, so the operators know this lineup works. We have very good open interface compliance in our RIC, and operators can think about if another RIC vendor have good compliance with their APIs, interfaces, then it can be replaced. So the idea is to have these replaceable parts, and as long as these components are compliant to specifications, the use case itself is certified across standard interfaces.
Okay. Jonas, if we can come to you now, and if you can talk about the current state of Open RAN technology maturity and how the certification process might help there, and the kind of role that Capgemini is playing.
Absolutely. So as you know, Capgemini Engineering is part of the I14Y Lab, so we are a consortium partner. We're part of this ecosystem. So we've been recently involved in this end-to-end badging that's going on at the i14Y Lab. So as Capgemini, we are supporting as a system integrator, and we also have our CUD within this end-to-end setups. So for one setups is now eligible for an end-to-end badge, and we're now working on this reporting. So we're at the last step to get the Oran Alliance certificate.
Okay.
A badge here in this case, yeah.
Okay. And Ian, what role is Viavi playing here? As a test and measurement company, a pretty established one.
Yes, of course. I mean, we at Viavi, we're very pleased to partner with the i14Y Lab and a lot of Open RAN labs around the world to, of course, provide our equipment, test cases, expertise to enable certification and badging. That's obviously a key part. And we're also big supporters of the ORAN Alliance. Arda and I, we were in Athens last week on an ORAN meeting. So been in Europe for 2 weeks now. So that's why I'm awake and not jet lagged. So, a lot of progress. I think there's definitely, in the group that I chair in ORAN, the Test Integration Focus Group, that's the basis for the certification process, the test cases. How do we issue this so that, again, I was just talking to a small RU vendor here in MWC. And for them, they want to be able to certify and really trust that I can interoperate with as many DU vendors as possible without needing to retest and really feel like they have to do an interop like all the time. So I think we need to progress our certification so that we get to a point wherein we're a lot closer to plug and play than where we are today, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay. And Andreas, can you tell us about what kind of impact the work that i14Y Lab has done so far? What have you learned? How has it helped to kind of set up what's going to happen next?
Yeah, that's a good point. So, as I said, we run the first MVP regarding the ORAN conformance tests and the ORAN end-to-end batches, and we extracted a lot of learnings from those endeavor. First is, if we want to bring it to an industry level, we may need to improve our lab itself. That's we have to admit for sure, and we already work on that. On the other hand, we closely work with TIP and the ORAN Alliance on that. We want to develop the test plans and the test specifications further. And the good thing about i14Y is we have already the 3 operators on board, so we can aggregate their requirements and add additional points to the existing test plan. So then we can bring it closer to a level that hopefully it's a kind of pre-integration for the systems, and we can achieve this exchangeability that all of us want to see from ORAN.
Okay. And Arda, can you just explain how important this is going to be for companies that want to engage and want to be working with the increasing number of network operators that are now starting to trial, test, and deploy Open RAN? What does it mean for the vendor community?
I think that is one of the main motivators, both for vendors and operators. We've been in trials with many tier ones, and in some cases we are replicating the same use case, similar test setup with our partners, whether in a North American operator, European or Japanese operator. Rather than going that effort multiple times, if we can have one operator certify the results, it will help speed up the adoption, reduce the redundancy on vendor side as well as operators. So we have demonstrated this with the first use case, and you may have seen DT have issued a press release earlier today with this i14Y certification. And I expect more operators to follow, and we'll have this large set of use cases that are certified.
Jonas, can you tell us a bit more about this, about the importance of this to the broader community, and how Capgemini can help in this whole process to take it out to the whole industry?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that question. So, from our point of view, as a vendor for software and as system integrators, this is very important as a first step, let's say, to get closer to the operator so that our solutions are mature so that the operator could adopt them in their deployments. From one hand side. From the other hand side, this is also going to increase the innovation and, let's say, bring healthy kind of competition between the vendors to work on solutions that are certified so that the operators tend to select them.
Okay. And Ian, obviously, you know, we're talking here about the i14Y Lab as an example of an organization that's already part of this process, but there's a lot of test centers around the world. Can you talk about the OTICs, the role they play, and how important that is in getting this process up and running?
For sure. So we have 17 OTICs approved already as of today worldwide. So that's a big number. In fact, just last week, we're about to approve 2 more. So it'll be a total of 19. That's all around the world. A lot in Europe are based on operators, like European OTIC in Berlin as an example. And kudos to i14Y. We're finally going to get our first certificates and badges out of the European OTICs, which is amazing. The Asian OTICs have been hard at work doing that for a while. Most of the badges so far has been from the Asian OTICs, and we're eagerly awaiting the first from North America. So I think it's progressing. We're seeing vendors engaging, and that's the good thing, okay? But I also want to put a little bit of realism here, right? In terms of really motivating vendors to go through this so that the OTICs actually have vendors coming to them to go through this process. But I think it starts from operators. Making it very clear, which is what is happening here, 3 major operators saying, we need certification. That is the vehicle to get Open RAN going. And we need to hear that consistently. We need to see, I want to see certificates and badges in my RFIs and RFQs from the operators. And I think that's how we really foster this ecosystem.
Okay. And can you just talk as well a little bit more about how an organization like the O-RAN Alliance plays a role here? What is the work that goes on in the alliance that then feeds into this process? Because there must be a lot of work done already that's the bedrock for this.
Absolutely. So as you know, O-RAN Alliance is really primarily a specification body. So every work group works on the test specifications, which becomes the basis for the certificate themselves, right? So working group 4, for example, in charge of open front haul, they create the conformance test spec for the front haul, and then using that spec, if vendors pass it, they get a certificate. So clearly a lot of specification, a lot of processes, the OTIC kind of management process, but also the, I would say, the plug fests, right? That's another avenue which allows vendors a much lower bar to participate, right? Because all you need to do is show up in a plugfest venue with your equipment and get paired up, or maybe you bring your cohort together into a lab to do that. And all of those are organized by the O-RAN Alliance.
Okay.
And if I may add to
go
Ian,
ahead.
so we've been working very coordinated in O-RAN Alliance. In Working Group 1, we are defining these use cases. It's one of the examples here today with the DT press release, a use case is certified. So the different working groups take it to test specification, and then TAFG, led by Ian, is further defining the test cases for certification. So I think what we do in O-RAN Alliance plus what is being done in TIP is of significant importance for this overall certification process.
Okay, thanks. Andreas, you've set the ball rolling at i14Y Lab. What's the next steps, and how do more companies get involved with what's going on?
Yeah, so let's start with the latter question. So how to involve companies? So as we are still a publicly funded project, we are limited in commercial activities, for sure. It gives us a lot of freedom on the one hand side, on the other hand, so we are binded by some of the funding conditions. So my point is just contact us via webpage or on the other channels, LinkedIn or so, and happy to work with any of the companies that are interested. And there's at least two very important points this year where you can work with i14Y, or the companies can work with i14Y. One is we will host the Fall Plugfest of Oran Alliance, and have been very successful in hosting Plugfests. So that's, if you look at the numbers of the European OTECs, how many companies participated, that's quite a success for i14Y. And secondly, there will be the i14Y Summit in September. Also a good opportunity to get in touch. And as I said, any company is welcome. Just reach us out and let's start talking and then work on a proposal. So,
okay. So some concrete next steps to look forward to this year. We're coming to the end of our panel, but let's, like we did with the first panel, let's just get a quick main takeaway for the market from each of our panelists. If we start with you, Arda.
I think from Juniper side, we have full support for the certification. The first example with our work with DTN partners, and we'll be participating in further certifications.
Okay, Jonas.
Yeah, from our side, definitely the certification plays a really essential role. So, and i14Y Lab, this is just the first MVP we started with, and I think there's a lot more to do in that area, and I think this is just the start. Yeah.
Okay. Ian.
For me, it's like operators, please request for certificates and badges in your RFIs and RFQs. Vendors, visit your nearest OTIC, talk to them. They're waiting for your business.
Andreas.
Yeah, so we will contribute and work with TIB and Oran Alliance to develop the certificates further and even to bring more operators on board to do that jointly.
Okay, excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights to give us some concrete examples of how this is working already. Thank you for the audience for staying. Let's give the panelists a round of applause, please. I think we're just going to wait for our host.
Thank you so much for this very inspiring discussion and the important coalition that you represent. Let's give another huge round of applause to all of our panelists, and thank you for being here. Now, before you go anywhere, we have the next slot coming up in just a few minutes here. At 3:20, we're going to talk about the Secure Access Service Edge, or SASE, and the evolution of the security ecosystem. So this is a very important slot that you don't want to miss. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.